So we're going to look at example 4. So all of these are given as frequencies. We're actually going to change it just to be the number values. So get rid of the decimal and we're just making them whole numbers. The first thing we want to do is find the totals of each one. So I want to find the total amount of people that were surveyed in Glendale. So how many would that be? So if 29 people from Glendale said yes and 5 said no, we add those two together, we get 34. How many people total were surveyed in Santa Monica? 30. How many people were surveyed in Long Beach? 36. How many people total said yes? So 29 plus 27 plus 32. 88. And how many people total said no? 12. How many people total were surveyed? 100. Awesome. So you could just add the amount of people that said yes and no, add them together. So now we actually have to read the question. And to find the probability, it's the same thing as what we did in 10.1. It's what we want over the total. Now we have to be careful here because the total is not always the total of everything. It's not going to be how many people total we had. It could be, depending on the wording of the question, but the wording is kind of what you're going to be quizzed on. Like, you have to come up with what is it that we're trying to find the probability of and what's the pool of people that we're looking at. So for A, it says, what's the probability that a randomly selected customer who is located in Glendale will recommend the provider? So we're looking for a randomly selected customer who's located in Glendale. And what's the probability that they will recommend the provider? So let's look at the total first. What do you think the total amount of people that we're looking at here is? 34. The total amount of people that were surveyed in Glendale is 34. And out of those 34, how many of them recommend the provider? 29. So our answer is 29 over 34. We could leave it as a fraction, a simplified fraction, or how else could we write our answer?
Decimal.
As a decimal. So we could do 29 divided by 34. And we'd get 0.85. How else could we leave our answer? As a percent, so 85%. So B says, what is the probability that a randomly selected customer who will not recommend the provider is located in Long Beach? So we want to see what's the probability that a randomly selected customer who will not recommend the provider is located in Long Beach. So what do you think my total is?
36.
Careful, we're finding the probability that a randomly selected customer who will not recommend the provider. What's the total amount of people that do not recommend the provider? 12. All these people said no, 12. So that's my total. And out of that, how many are located in Long Beach? 4. Can I simplify 4 over 12? To what? 1 over 3. Or we could leave it as a decimal, which would be 0.33. Or as a percent, which would be 33%. So any of these would be fine. You just can't leave your answer as 4 over 12 because that's not a simplified fraction. And then we're going to skip C. What's the probability that a randomly selected customer who is located in Santa Monica will not recommend the provider to a friend? First thing we want to do is find the totals. This is the same chart that we did in the last page. But remember, we're changing it to whole numbers. So we're just looking at the number, not the decimal version of it. So what's the total amount of people we have from Glendale? 34. Santa Monica?
30.
Long Beach? What's the total amount of people we had that said yes?
88.
And the total amount of people that said no?
12.
And the total amount of people total? 100. All right, perfect. So once we have our totals, Let's go back to the question and read what it's looking for. So it says the probability that a randomly selected customer who is located in Santa Monica will not recommend the provider to a friend. So we're randomly selecting a customer who's located in Santa Monica. What's the probability that they will not recommend the provider to a friend? So what's the total amount that we're looking at? Santa Monica would be 30. Perfect. So 30 goes on the bottom. And out of those, how many will not recommend the provider? 3. Can I simplify this fraction? 1 over 10. And then what would this be as a decimal? 0.10 or 0.1. And then as a percent? 10%. You move the decimal twice. 10%. And then you're going to skip number 6. All right, so looking at number 3. 3 gives us the table, but not all of the information's filled in the table. Yes. We have to be careful because we can't just go in filling random numbers wherever we want. What do you think I could fill in first into my table? The total for pass, I could do that. So if these two are going to add up to 50, what's the total for pass? 40. Perfect. We could do the total at the bottom too, so we know that these two are going to add up to 50. So what's the total that did not study? 12. What can we find next? Studied and passed. If we know that these two are going to add up to 40, 34. What do you want to find next?
The total for the study is
So-
4 that failed.
Awesome. Because the total is 38, and we know that 34 studied and passed, 4 have to have studied and failed. Yeah, this problem's just asking you to fill in the table. So how many people did not study and failed? 6.
That's it.
All right, so what's the first thing I should do for 13? Calculate the totals. So you can use your calculator. What's the total amount of people from Glens Falls? 165. Total from Saratoga? 365. And total from Albany? 469. So what's the total amount of people total? 999. What's the total amount of people that said yes? 749. And the total amount of people that said no? 250. Awesome. So A says, what's the probability that a randomly selected patient located in Saratoga was satisfied with the communication of the physician? So what's the total amount of people that we're looking at here? 365. We're randomly selecting a patient located in Saratoga. So out of all the people surveyed in Saratoga, that was 365. How many of those 365 were satisfied with the communication? 288. If you're not sure if you can simplify this fraction or not, put it in the calculator. Do 288 divided by 365. And just leave the answer as a decimal. That way you don't have to worry about simplifying it correctly. Just put it in the calculator and give me the decimal. So 0.789, which would be what percent? 78.9%.